Hello and welcome to Ask an Adventurer. I want to start this week by showing you my art gallery. I've started finding and collecting art from skips, so when I find art in a skip, I bring it home. Look, I've got Marilyn, pretty cool. I've got a really nasty waterfall. Got a classic landscape, and the one that started it all, look at this. I found this in a skip. It's massive and horrible and I love it. So yeah, my shed art gallery, and it's quite fitting. It's quite fitting that I decide to show you my art gallery. Even art from a shed, because that obviously means I've got my own art gallery in my shed. That means I'm really rich, which leads us nicely on to question 1 today, which says, isn't your wife rich and your shed is actually your mother-in-law's garden? Would you be able to be a full-time adventurer if you had to actually pay the bills? The whole adventure scene is unrealistic. It's only rich kids who can afford to do it full-time. You post stuff up from one trip over the course of weeks to make it look like you are adventuring all the time. It's not a real job or something that will pay a continuous wage. Name not left for that one, funnily enough. Right, well, I mean, this is really interesting. This is someone who's angry at me, but also I think it is actually an interesting question. And I think the key part of it is, would you be able to be a full-time adventurer if you actually had to pay the bills? Well, you're right. You do need to be able to pay the bills to be a full-time adventurer. And I do pay the bills from adventure, and you could do too. It's definitely possible. The hard part financially, I completely agree with this point, is that you need somehow to pay for your adventuring life until you are earning money from the adventures. And the way I did that, I was lucky because I was young, so I was carefree and adventuring cheap, and I worked weekends in the Territorial Army. I worked university holidays in the pub. I saved up money till I had £7,000 in the bank. I know that's quite a bit of spare cash, but rather than then paying rent or bills or anything like that, I cleared up my life and I went off and I spent that £7,000 on adventure. And that investment of money meant that when I got home, I had an interesting story, and I was pretty much instantly able to start giving talks in schools for smaller amounts of money. But if you do loads of talks in a week, you can start to earn a fine amount of money, and gradually from that, just doing loads and loads and loads of school talks to pay for my life. While I was away on the adventure, I did hundreds of unpaid school talks, so that when I came home, I was ready to hit the ground running with a decent talk and a sort of hopefully a quality product. Because it is hard. The really hard part is, how do you earn money before you start earning money? So in that sense, I do understand this person's angry question. And then the next part, you post stuff up from one trip over the course of weeks. Yeah, I guess there's 2 points here. One is that, yeah, I do milk my adventures for all they're worth, especially these days now. I don't actually do anything massively big or exciting. I do spread out my stories over time, guilty as charged. But I suppose the defense I would put to that is that the point of social media is to tell the story, and I would rather tell a story in a way that readers want to consume it, i.e. maybe one story, one post per day, rather than a massive deluge of content. So that would be my defense for spreading my stuff out, to make it look like I'm adventuring all the time. But then the final thing, it's not a real job or something that will pay a continuous wage. This has been my full-time employment for many years now, so it can do that. So if you're the guy who's cross at me, please, you can also earn a living from doing adventures. You just need to save up to have an adventure in the first place. That's the hard bit. Go do something really big and really cheap. Hone your skills while you're away, and then tell your stories when you are back. Right. Next question. Do you struggle with feeling isolated or like you're not living your days to the fullest when you're doing your behind the scenes work? Any tips for these topics? Well, that's interesting. So I suppose then it also links up to the last question about it not being a real job. Now, I spend most of my days and most of my hours of my days in the shed, normally writing books or doing admin or doing stuff like this, creating content, which hopefully will then be interesting to people, and people will then see this stuff and be interested in what I do, find out more about me, and then buy a book. So it then becomes a job. So do I feel like I'm not living my fullest? I mean, if I was a millionaire, I'd still be doing quite a lot of what I'm doing now. So although it is work, I do enjoy it. So in that sense, I'm lucky that I do feel that fulfilled from the work part of my job. What do you miss when you look at your peers who took a more normal route in life? This is interesting how these questions link together. I'm just choosing them chronologically and randomly from the list. What do I miss when I look at my peers? I suppose I do miss the fact that adventure for normal people is just pure, utter fun, escapism, joy, simplicity, lovely. For me, it is also work, and it's a great work to have, but I do slightly miss just the woohoo joy, unrestricted, no strings attached joy of that. What I really do miss from what I do is not working with colleagues. I do miss that notion of being in a work environment, being really challenged by other interesting colleagues. I also guess I miss the social side. I basically spend all day on my own in my shed. I have no friends. I never speak to anyone except to myself on a camera. So I miss the social aspect of a more normal life. I miss the sort of, I guess as you move through a career, you just move up through the ladder. Generally you get promoted, you start to earn more as you go through, and there's benefits to that, but one good thing about it that I miss is that that's proving your worth. You're like, oh, you are good at your job, you're getting better at your job, you're doing well at your job. It's quite hard for me to measure what success looks like, and because I don't have any boss saying to me, oh, well done, you're doing really well, I don't have any sort of affirmation that what I'm doing is actually being effective and efficient and striking a chord. So I miss that, I guess. What else do I miss? Quite like an office canteen that gave me meals. Do those things exist? Next question. Do you ever get lonely or homesick on big adventures? And how do you deal with that when you do? I get very lonely and very homesick on big adventures, very much so. And I get very sad and I think, what am I doing? This is ridiculous. I want to be with my friends and family. So yeah, I really do. How do I deal with it? I just grind on, get a good night's sleep, get some food. Because I know that the feeling of loneliness is not very far away from solitude, and solitude's one of the wonderful parts of being on an adventure. The thought that, wow, I'm out here in the world, no one knows where I am, and for this brief time I am completely self-reliant, completely dependent upon myself, and that solitude side of adventures is great. But yeah, I think for me it's inevitable. I have the ups and downs. What's your saddle of choice when riding long distance? I cycle around the world with a Brooks saddle. They're really hard and leather and uncomfy for a while, but after a bit they're fantastic. How do you fight the urge to procrastinate when you know that you should be writing? Well, one way that I procrastinate when I know that I should be writing is I make Ask an Adventurer videos like this. I mean, this literally, the reason I'm doing this morning is because I'm procrastinating book writing. I'm really bad procrastinating. I sort of faff around, I check the internet. I've got a thing on my computer called, what's it called? Self-control. No, it's called Freedom. It's an app called Freedom on a Mac, and it basically blocks websites. That stops me checking Twitter and BBC Sport. Sometimes when I'm really struggling in my shed, I go to a cafe that doesn't have Wi-Fi and I can get some writing just done by being in a different setting. Or if I've got book editing to do, I print out some pages and go to the woods. But geez, I procrastinate so much, it drives me absolutely nuts. how much time do you spend trying to book in talks and work and stuff to pay the bills, and how much time do you spend writing? I probably spend an hour and a half a day on admin, trying to get talks, invoicing for talks, doing stuff like these videos to try and raise my profile to get more talks, sharing book reviews of mine on social medias that hopefully people will read more about my books. Maybe about an hour and a half of that, and then maybe the rest of the working day, which for me is another 4 or 5 hours book writing. Although geez, I do not get 5 hours of book writing done, but yeah, I'd say the majority of what I'm trying to do in the day is write. What's your own description of an adventure? Are there things you think of as semi-adventures, or are there things that just you say, hell no, that's just everyday business? Can you be a part-time adventurer? If it feels like an adventure to you, then it is. And that depends, I suppose, on your experience, but also probably on your mindset that day. Like some days, you probably respond differently to things. So it's just a personal thing. There's no set rule on what is an adventure. Can you be a part-time adventurer? Absolutely. I am a part-time adventurer. I think we all are, aren't we? Definitely. Right. Doing cool stuff takes preparation. Even a day trip involves packing, buying food, researching a route, lots of frustrating driving. I love adventures but hate preparing. It's a hassle and doesn't feel spontaneous at all. How do you motivate yourself? Is it hard for you? Wow. Two men look out through the same bars. One sees the mud and one the stars. Because you could argue that one of the excitements of adventures, the preparation, the looking on maps, the wondering where you'll go, the trying to decide what kit to take, and then the rummaging around in your shelf to get the right bits of kit, and then driving to adventures. I personally love travelling to adventure. I'm getting excited about it. I already feel that I've clocked off from real life, and I'm looking forward to the adventuring. So I think that's just a question of your attitude, isn't it? And if you don't want to do lots of driving, then just get on a bike and pedal away from your front door, I suppose. Yeah, geez, I mean, they often say about running a marathon that the event is not the marathon itself. The marathon is the hundreds of runs you've been on before the race day. So maybe what you need to do is consider that the adventure begins with the concept of, I'm going to go and do X. And from that moment on, your adventure has begun. So try and be positive about all the bits that go along with it. How did you get started without feeling overwhelmed by the planning? I've just left school and want to start travelling immediately, but I have no idea how to formulate a plan. Interesting how that is sort of links to the other one a bit. Well, there's two phases of the planning. One is the daydreaming, coming up with the idea, and this is fun. If you don't find this fun, then you probably don't really want to do an adventure. You probably feel you ought to do one. But reading books, looking on YouTube videos, scrolling through Instagram, get a map of the world, work out how much time you've got. If you've got a year to spend, you could get a map of the world. I've got a map of the world here. You could spin around like this, dizzy, and then point Guinea in West Africa. Go to Guinea. That sounds pretty cool. If you don't have that much time to spare, get your local map or the map of Britain and point to there and then cycle to there. So the planning, the coming up with ideas, that's fun. That really is fun. And then the actual next part, the planning thing is, well, this is when you need a book called Grand Adventures, but come up with a list of jobs to do, just get on and do them. And this is the slightly boring thing you have to do before you get out the front door and do something cool. I don't think you should feel overwhelmed by it though. Unless you're planning to go to the moon, it's really not rocket science. You'll be fine. Just get excited about the idea and then tick off the other things. Final question. I'm thinking about quitting my teaching job. I'd love to do what you do. Where would I start and how long before money starts coming in? This is something I've talked about a lot of times, but I'll say it once again because it's worth reiterating. And you, being a teacher, are in the perfect position here, because the challenge is, how do you do the adventure? How do you grow an audience? How do you build a skill? How do you start telling a story? How do you get people interested in what you're doing when you're not earning any money from any of those things? And you're in a perfect position because you're a teacher. So you've got 2 months of summer time you can adventure. You've got a few weeks at other times of the year when you can go adventure. So you have got time, perhaps over the next year of teaching, to do some really cool adventures and to start to grow an audience and tell a story and build up your USP, your unique skill. Why will people give you money for what you're doing? Why will they hire you, for example, and not me? There's loads and loads of good reasons for that, your unique point. So use your time now as a teacher to start building things up so that you have some momentum. And then perhaps you could go part-time at your school for 1 more year, and then you start to build up more momentum and earn more money. But yeah, you can do it. Go for it. And the great thing is, spending a year, 2 years, 5 years doing adventuring, if for some reason it doesn't work out, you can go back to teaching, and surely you will be a better teacher for having done that different aspect of life. Thank you very much for your questions. Please keep them coming in, and come back soon for the new episode of Ask an Adventurer.